Intro to Research. This is a video about the basics of research and where and how to do research and why. So a lot of people think that doing research for school essays, you're just trying to find a quote to stick in to your brilliant piece of writing, and you just kind of jam it in there so you meet the requirement of whatever your instructor has decided, how many sources that you need so many quotes, or so you're just trying to fulfill a requirement. But that's not what I want you to do here. I want you to actually find information that is helpful to you and your argument, and not just to find quotes that you can stick in places. You will probably eventually end up using quotes or paraphrases, but you're not just using them to fulfill a quota. Mainly, you are focused on your audience. What kinds of research would your audience expect from whatever it is that you're writing? Are they expecting a scholarly article? Would that be more persuasive to them? I found this scholarly article from a journal called Composition Studies. It's one that I read. And I thought this was an interesting article about the different kinds of Englishes people use. So this would be an appropriate thing for me to use if I was going to convince, say, my dean or my other instructors, things like that, that maybe we should encourage other kinds of Englishes. So, or maybe a good source would be a blog by somebody knowledgeable. This is a blog by somebody named Jesse Stommel, and he's a blogger that I follow because he teaches writing, and he also teaches like videos, how to make videos, and so he is someone very knowledgeable, but he writes a blog, and so I could cite information from a blog. Sometimes TED Talks are also very informative. So you could find information. A lot of times TED Talks are distilled versions of somebody's book. And so you could get a taste for, okay, here's what this book is about, or here's what this idea is about. And you can use these too, and that might lead you to go read their book or go look at the article that they wrote if you want more details. But a TED Talk is a perfectly good resource that might be informative depending on the audience. Perhaps a TED Talk really speaks to whatever audience that you're going for. And there's lots of different kinds of sources that you will find. You just have to really decide what fits your audience. Okay, let me read this quote to you. The purpose of using your sources is not to create your argument, but to strengthen the argument you already have. I already want you to have a good idea of what you're going to say, and these sources that you find, the research that you do, will likely strengthen it. But you also may find resources that disagree with you, and that's okay. You can still use those sources because you can show that you have looked at the other side of an argument, and you can still, and so you can appear fair and balanced if that's something that would appeal to your audience. But you can also use that research that you've done that disagrees with you and change your own mind too, and come up with a different argument of what you think, a more nuanced argument maybe, depending on the research that you have done. Okay, so everybody likes to start with research, probably one of two places, which is Google. You might type something in, we all do it, to find something. Another place that a lot of people look is Wikipedia. I don't have a fun little image for that one. And I look at Wikipedia all the time. I watched that movie Bohemian Rhapsody, and I wanted to learn more about Freddie Mercury, so I looked him up on Wikipedia. We all do it. And a Wikipedia source also has sources. If you scroll to the very bottom of them, they have sources that they've cited, so they make sure that what they have is true. But you need to decide, is a Wikipedia article going to convince somebody? Maybe so. Maybe you need something more substantial. And that's where we go to the library, because they have more resources. Now, you may not believe me, but let me show you this graphic. So, this whole picture illustrates the entire internet, basically. The top two squares, the green and the blue square, that's basically the open web, the things that are easily searchable. You search on Google or Yahoo, and you'll find different web pages. But this kind of gray square and this red square at the bottom, that's the invisible web. There is so much underneath. It's kind of like an iceberg where you really only are seeing the tip of the information that you could get through Google. Most of the invisible web mainly is because it's fee-based. And what that means is you have to pay for it. So like the New York Times, you'll notice if you just look up the New York Times in Google, there's a paywall. You might get 2 free articles for a month, but then you have to start paying to read it. And that's so that the newspaper can pay their journalists to do what they do. And that goes for also journal articles. These journals, they cost money to make. The writers who write these articles, they spend a lot of time and research. And so if you want good information, basically you have to pay for it. But the good thing is that our library pays to have access to several of these databases that will be very useful to us. So there are so many different databases. These are just a few of them. I have not put all of them up here by any means. One that I think might be useful for us in the future is ERIC. It's all about education. So databases are useful because they are focused and collected by somebody. Like all of the resources in ERIC are about education. In PubMed, that's one you would go to if you wanted to find a journal article about a new medical device or a new medical study. That's where you would go for those things. JSTOR is something that I used when I was an English major because it has lots of literary criticism articles. It also has some books and some primary sources like access to poems and things if you have to do that for a literature class. And the one at the bottom is Academic Search Complete, and that is basically just a big old, not dumping ground because it is more curated than just Google, but it has a lot, it's the biggest database and it has lots of access to basically some of these other databases. So that's a really good one to search for. If you're not really sure what little niche area you want to search in, that one is probably a good one to start with. So we have all those databases, and basically this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to the library, and I'm going to show you how to go through Elson Cho's library to search through the databases because you're going to find better information there than you will just on Google.